Hello, everyone. My name is Dan Hernandez. I am the Assistant Director of Fraternity Sorority Life at UT Dallas. I'm a Delt from the Theta Lambda chapter at UC Riverside. I've been in the field now for about 5 years and currently been working at UT Dallas for 2 years.
Great. And then since we only have a few of advisors on, why don't we go ahead and kind of do an introduction. As I call it your name, just kind of talk about what chapter you're advising and how long you've been in that role, just so we can all kind of get a sense of who's on the audience. So Rod, why don't we start with you? Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Okay, well, I helped them form the colony at FIT, and I was never involved in actually fraternities before. But I'm an academic advisor at the school already. So I help them. That's what I do every day is track students and help them get back on track and track the midterm grades. And I advise all levels of the school. So the students that were already academically involved want to ask me if I could be their academic advisor. And I know our Greek. I know the people who run the Greek on campus, but I've never been involved myself. And then, so after that, they initiated me, I guess it's been a year and a half ago. So I actually came into the adults afterwards, and then this year I was requested to be their actual chapter advisor. So I started as an academic faculty advisor, and then this year I'm now their chapter advisor. And I'm director of academic support on campus, and I'm working on my PhD at the school, so I'm in the school as well.
Fabulous. Randy, how about you? We might have lost Randy. How about Richard?
I'm advising at Theta Gamma chapter at Arizona State University, and I've done it for about 10 years now since we came back to recolonize on the campus. Retired public school teacher in the area of sciences primarily. So that's pretty much my Delt resume as an advisor now.
And how long have you been in that advisor position?
About 10 years.
Great. And I saw Dustin on. So Dustin, tell us about yourself.
I'm currently the chapter advisor of Iota Delta at Quincy University. I'm also an advisor at Zeta Lambda, which is Western Illinois University. I've been doing that since 2009. I am a charter member, founding father of Iota Delta, so that's kind of a standing point with me. But I have currently on my advisory committee, I have 5 other advisors that I've kind of broken into almost an alumni exec board that kind of help me disperse a lot of the responsibilities, so it lightens the load for me for sure. But like I said, I'm just now getting, I think, 2 more that are interested to jump on board. So that's what I'm doing.
Excellent. And Bill, are you still there?
I am, and I'm Bill Richardson. I'm a member of the Arts Chapter, which is the real reason why I'm on the call, because I try to get to as many of these as I can, because I'm a big supporter in the webinars, and I also like to know what we're talking about with our advisors, so that if people within the division call me and want to talk about it, I know what was said and can talk about the resources. However, I also work with the folks with Richard at Arizona State University on a more continuing basis. And I'm one of the big things I want to get out of this call is we have a new guy here that we have to deal with, and I just wanted to get some thoughts on how we might deal with this new guy. Here he's really tough. His name is Jameson Root.
I would just not talk to him.
That's a good idea. All right.
You're better off just ignoring him.
And we can move forward.
That's what I try to do.
Randy, were you able to get your phone off of mute? Are you still with us, Randy? Okay. And Tom Pitt, did you make it onto the call? I see you online. All right, I'll try to reach out to him in a separate module. But let's see. So now we're going to kind of start with some basics, and I'm going to let Dan and Mark kind of talk about the role of the campus advisor, the campus Greek advisor, and kind of what their backgrounds are that they generally see as they go to conferences, just so everybody on the call kind of has an understanding of the background and the experience that our campus advisors have. So I'm not sure who wants to start, Daniel or Mark, if you want to take it over for a few minutes.
Oh, Mark, you can start. Give us your words of wisdom.
Well, I think that the function of the campus advisor, it's different from campus to campus. A lot of it depends on how many resources the university puts towards the Greek community. So, a lot of time they spend, especially if they're a smaller office or part of student activities, most of their time working with the governing councils, ISD, Panhellenic, MPHC, those kind of things. That ends up sucking up a lot of their time most of the time. I'm lucky at Case. I have 2 other professional staff and a host of grad students. So I get to spend most of my time working with chapter presidents and working more directly with the chapter because I have one person whose only job it is to advise our councils, and someone else's job is just to work on the judicial and the risk management and the housing part of it. But a lot of places, they're going to have to do all that stuff and maybe only have one person or a couple people and a couple grad students. So a lot of that, how much they can work with the chapters and work with the advisors, depends on how much other stuff they have on their plate that they have to do, and how much time they spend putting out fires as opposed to actually getting to actually advise. I don't know, Dan, if you have other things you want to add about the function of the Greek advisor.
Yeah, and usually experiences with that, I'm the one that deals all with the IFC. So in my role, the function of it is just I advise the governing council of IFC, help with the IFC, assist with the IFC recruitment, but also as well, I'm the one that deals directly with the chapters and have those individual meetings with the chapter presidents, with event management and planning, and making sure that events are following their own rules within their national constitution and bylaws, but also just FIPG rules in general. And just kind of making sure that everything just kind of going according to plan, and that the organizations are doing what they're supposed to be doing.
I guess one of the things that I really see as another one of my main roles is to be the advocate for the community with other places on campus, especially the upper level administration. I spend a lot of my time trying to gather assessment data, retention numbers, those kind of things to share with the VP, with the provost, those kind of people, so they understand the value that the community is adding to the campus.
Great, and this is a pretty informal call, so if anybody has questions at any time, feel free to kind of speak up and ask your questions. You can do it in the chat panel to the right of your screen, well, it's the right of my screen, or you can just speak up and ask it on the phone as well. But I think I heard somebody just join our call. Is there somebody that just joined in?
Yeah, it was Tom Pitt. I figured out how to get on with the phone. I couldn't make my microphone on the computer work.
Okay. Well, welcome. So Daniel and Mark, is there any special degrees or certifications or any kind of national recognition that you kind of go through, or is it just based on the campus that you're working with?
Well, almost everybody has a master's in higher education administration or student affairs. I'm weird that I don't. I have a JD, but my other 2 staff members both have masters in higher ed, so they usually have spent, during their 2 years of grad school, also served that time as a graduate assistant somewhere. I did do that in law school. I was an ISD advisor as a graduate student. But that typically they do 2 years of higher ed masters, and then with a assistantship with that.
Yeah, and most of your campus advisors will have some sort of experience and knowledge base of working with Greek organizations. A lot of them themselves have been, majority of them would have been in a Greek letter organization themselves. You do have those that were not involved in a Greek organization, but probably have more experience with. On our side for training and education is more of what we kind of call student development. So it's sort of in a sense of just making sure that we are educating the students and kind of pushing them to the next level in their development once they are going through the college experience and then after they graduate.
Great. And so, the main thing, well, not what I always try to advocate is developing a relationship with your campus Greek advisor, so that it's not always just a phone call of them saying you broke the rules again, but to where you can more work as a team. So I'm interested in Mark and Daniel, kind of your take on how should an advisor kind of start to develop that relationship? What information should be shared? How often should you meet? So that it's not just always kind of that negative relationship that we often hear about at our conferences and our networking events.
Well, I can tell a little bit about what I've been trying to do this year, because I made a point of emphasis to work more with my chapter advisors, and I meet with almost all the presidents every week. And so what I started to do was send out a little meeting update, an email each week, telling them what we talked about, and then trying to meet with each of them at least once a semester. So far that hasn't been going so well, but I've at least reached out and tried to schedule those. At least one. My goal is at least one face-to-face meeting with them a semester. It's definitely something that we've underutilized, is that relationship, and that we, from our side, we don't want to only call when things are in trouble. And in fact, I think, and I know, Dan, this is your experience, but I think that lots of times we've made the mistake of, when someone's in trouble, that we skip the advisor lots of times and go right to headquarters, when we probably should be involving the advisor in those conversations way earlier. But I found that there's a couple advisors who will respond back to what they're seeing and what their conversations, and whether I'm telling them something new or to enhance what I talked about. And so for those couple of advisors who are really engaged in, it's just an email dialogue really, but I feel like we have a pretty good handle on those chapters, and that we're working in tandem to make sure that they're moving in the right direction, and that we're helping them, with their issues.
Yeah, I guess for tips, it's one of those things of just, I agree with Mark, maybe of just at least some sort of maybe phone conversation if time conflict, because you are, as advisors, we know that you're all doing this as a volunteer role in that, so sometimes you won't be able to speak till after 5, but, one of those things of just a phone call, an email, of sort of just introducing yourself. But also as well, there's one key thing I think to kind of really start that relationship is maybe just asking what their expectations are of the chapter. What are some things that they see that maybe they do well? What are some other things that they could maybe improve upon? So that way maybe you can get a different perspective from somebody on the outside looking in of just what do they see, what do they hear from maybe other administrators, other organizations on campus to kind of really help push your chapter to the next level and kind of make those improvements.
Are there any questions from the field as to any or any comments, I guess, of things that have worked for you in maintaining your relationship with a chapter advisor, or any frustrations that you've had that maybe this small group can help troubleshoot with? Hearing nothing. We'll move on, and we can, if you come up with one, we can always come back to it and address it as we go through this presentation. But and now we kind of want to look at trends. Since the Greek advisors are active on campus every day, and with a majority, or not a majority, with several different chapters of different fraternities, they're able to pick up on the trends and kind of what's happening at the grassroots on the campuses that maybe us as advisors who have been out of the game for 10 plus years, maybe not able to catch on as fast. So I would welcome Daniel and Mark to kind of share what they're seeing on campus, either the positive or the negative, as far as kind of the trends that they're seeing with Greek life, and in particular the fraternities on their campuses.
One thing that I'm seeing a lot more of that I think would, for the chapter advisors to be aware of it, a lot more mental health issues, a lot more depression, suicidal ideation and attempts, even than when I started, 10, 12 years ago. I think that more students are coming, medicating, getting off their meds when they get to college, and it's becoming more and more of an issue. And I think that the chapter leadership and the advisors need to be aware of and know how to handle it. I had a student swallow bottle pills last week, and his brothers took him to the hospital, which is not how we like that to go. And so then having to work with the advisor and the chapter to know that, we understand you care for your brother, but you can only make it worse sometimes. If you're the one driving to the hospital, you got to call and get help, that kind of thing.
And so I'm sorry. So mental health is a pretty big trend. Are there resources that advisors can on your campus that advisors can access as far as recognizing signs or kind of symptoms of mental health as they're working with their chapter?
Well, yeah, I mean, I would say that, and I'm not an expert. What I do is I refer them to our counseling center. Our counseling center is pretty good. They have a counselor assigned to each chapter, so that I can refer them directly to an individual. And I think that, I think most counseling centers will be open to those kind of things. They're not doing that already. But then it's tough because, in both instances we had two kind of suicidal things happen last week, and both of them I asked the presidents, like, did you notice anything? And they both like, no, totally fine. No previous history, no issues. He seemed fine. And all of a sudden, comes down and says he swallowed a bottle of pills. So I think it's just to be aware of what the resources are. Maybe have counseling come in and talk about that with the chapter, or even call them and at least an advisor that and what kind of on-call resources the university has if your chapter house is considered campus housing. Because if they are, there's almost certainly a network of professional staff on call, and graduate staff on call all the time. If there are other issues for them to call and get help.
This is Bill. Can I jump in for a second?
Yes.
Absolutely.
One of the questions I had, I want to go back to just a statement a few minutes ago when you said that the brothers took this guy to the hospital, and you kind of talked about you frown on that a little bit. Not that the brothers were involved, but that they didn't call an ambulance or do something with a more professional staff. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, I just wanted to clarify that. It's not that we don't want them to get him help. It's just don't take him to the hospital yourself. Get somebody qualified to do that.
Right. It worked out for them, but if he had crashed in a car or something, they would have been in serious trouble. I always tell them I don't expect 18 to 22-year-olds to handle their suicidal brother. That we have a whole network on campus to help them deal with that. They need to identify there's an issue, make a call, and then pass it off. Because even I wouldn't want. If I was there, I'd be calling the counselor. I would not be trying to help him without getting the people who are trained to do that specifically to help out and take their guidance on what to do.
Okay, I didn't want that to be left hanging out there where there was any doubt of what we were trying to say there, and I appreciate you clarifying it.
Sure.
And so, as Mark was saying before, suicide and depression, especially among men, are becoming more prevalent now. And one of the things that I'm trying to do is probably being more proactive. For example, one of the things that on my institution, I have an advisor dinner, so I do it once a month and is invited for all the chapter advisors to come together. And so what I did, and you can probably maybe work and see with your counseling center, health and wellness center, was we did one sort of session with the advisors to kind of get them, it's called TIP certified. So it's just training in intervention and prevention of suicide is what it's called. And it's just a way, and we did it with our chapter presidents too, of just really looking to see what those signs are when it comes to depression, especially for different things of where you can look at and just be like, you know what? Yeah, David over here, he was a great guy. He was happy. Everything was great. But then they may not have noticed of when he may have switched and went to the downward spiral of this being really recluse, quiet, nothing seems to be going right, and maybe they weren't seeing these red flags that if they were just more educated and proactive about, they could see it and maybe start to do something before if it got to that point to where he may have swallowed some pills or things. But I think it's one of those things just kind of just being more aware, and also too as well, if you do want to kind of establish that relationship with the advisor, ask to see what that protocol would be, just because as well as they are our brothers as advisors, for the campus professional, they're our students. So we need to know if something happened because we have our own protocols that we have to follow. If a student is sent into the hospital, a student gets injured and different things. And so it's just sort of being aware of like for you to be for you to get that call from the chapter president that something happened to a chapter member, but also as well to make sure that the campus professional is aware so that way they can follow their own protocols because they're a student as well.
I had a question on an academic situation with some students in that universities throughout the Westpac have begun, and it's a trend everywhere, that we're making concessions for students with learning disabilities or any number of other things where we're making special tutoring available. We're making grade concessions, class concessions. Is the fraternity behind the times on this, or are we holding our grade point to where it is, and we need to hold it there, or should we be making some thoughts about if the university offers a special concession, should we be offering that same student that we pledged a concession?
Well, I don't think so. I think that they're not held to a different grade standard necessarily. They're just given some accommodations in their learning and their test taking. So I don't think, they should, the idea of that is that they come out, that they're given, that they use concessions to be on equal footing with the rest of the students as far as how they're evaluated academically. So I think when we're talking about evaluating them by their grade point average, the concessions that the university has already made and has to make would be shown in their grade point average, and we wouldn't have to accommodate for that, I don't think.
The only thing I would think with that is if there was something with pledge education, with new member education, that might require some assistance. But I think that's kind of on a case-by-case basis. I don't think from nationally we really have to change policy. But I agree. I think they're receiving assistance, whether it be special testing procedures or tutors, to kind of normalize their grade against the rest of the population. So I don't think we have to make a special accommodations on top of what they already receive.
Yeah, along those lines, another trend that we see is a lot of students who have disability don't want to report it and don't want to get the concession. That they can be disruptive even, but no one really knows what's going on because they haven't disclosed a disability because they don't want to be seen as different. And those are way more challenging than the ones who are getting accommodations. At the university level, you don't really know. You can't help them because they haven't asked for help.
Sure. And are there other trends that Mark and Daniel are seeing, or any trends that the advisors think they might be seeing that they want to see might be happening on other campuses as well?
This is Daniel. I guess another trend that I have been noticing about is I'm trying to figure out how to word it correctly, but I guess it's more of just how men are not, I guess, really advocates for women's issues or and just gender issues in general. There's a lot of times where I will see different articles and reports of a fraternity sent an email out within its own chapter members, and it got out, and it was sort of, in the sense, and the title was called like a rapey email, and just more incidences of where fraternity men have been more of a degrading women as being out more public with it, and not really seeing how maybe that is an issue. And so, as a upcoming trend, this is one thing that I've been noticing of just, I guess, where the men are not being gentlemen up living those values in it as something as well.
And so would that kind of go with the increase in social media as well, or is this more just like emails between brothers that are becoming, they're getting, forwarded to the wrong people?
As social media as well, with Twitter, with Facebook messages, texting. I mean, a lot of times now, whatever you do say between does come out within it, but it's also as well that you are saying these things, and so what is that really saying? How are the young men now viewing women and different things in that aspect? So that's a lot more what I'm seeing that's coming out into question.
Okay. Are there any kind of trends in risk management or any kind of social function issues that you are noticing, or is that just kind of as it's always been?
I haven't really seen any big changes.
No, I mean, I think the current one is depression that Mark hit on, and then, like I said, a new one that I'm seeing about more news articles and different things, and online articles from different news stations is just probably maybe hitting more on the respect for women issues that seems to be coming up. And
yeah, I think that
everything else, risk management, parties that haven't been managed properly. I mean, they're still around, but I don't say it's a new trend.
Yeah, well, and I think that as far as like Dan's mentioning things that are in the news, I mean the rape bait. He's referenced the rape bait email from Georgia Tech, and then there's been a series of culturally insensitive parties, and the whole thing at Alabama with the sororities not letting in any African American women. That those are the things that when they pop up by the fraternity sorority Google alert, and when those things happen, so the rape bait email has been showing up every day for about 2 weeks. There's a news story somewhere that's referencing that Georgia Tech thing. Same thing when the Crips and Blood party happened at Dartmouth, and the Alabama thing was, 10 or 12 articles a day for about 10 days. So those are the things that in the general public are kind of out there more than anything else that we're doing.
Okay. Do any of the advisors have questions about any trends?
Yeah, this is Richard Schmidt. Is it pretty much nationwide the very purposeful, excessive use of alcohol that young folks are engaged in? It's like the focus of their social events is to get to a point where they black out, or at least the raging kind of thing, or is that just kind of something that we're seeing in some regions?
I think it's more campus specific than regional specific. I'm lucky to work at a campus where that doesn't happen, but certainly there's campuses around close to me that they do have that issue. I don't think it necessarily matters size necessarily or that kind of thing, state versus private. I think it's just the culture of that particular school.
Yeah, excessive drinking is usually more of a campus-based issue, and it just sort of depends. Like when I worked at the University of North Texas, alcohol was a really big thing, but also campus-based wise, all the bars were literally across the street from the university. So there, when you have, $2.50 wells or $2 wells, that can happen at 4:00 in the afternoon. For a happy hour special, it's more students will have don't know how to control their alcohol intake, so there's a lot more issues, but that's usually more campus-based.
Any other questions from the advisors?
On my campus, I have a slightly different perspective. This is Rob Newcomb at Florida Institute of Technology. Because I'm I'm a faculty. I'm administrative faculty. I'm also on the Students of Concern committee. Just any students that have issues where they may be warnings of suicide, or there are other psychological other issues that come to light, either from a professor's perspective or someone else brings it to the attention of CAPS or my office, we bring these names to the SOC. So I'm actually involved earlier on a lot of different things. So, and my guys know that I'm involved deeper on campus. And when they generally will come to me early if they have issues, or if they know that their brother needs to come talk to me. And I've had them walk somebody to my office and say, he needs to talk to you now. And, they could deal with it. So that's one thing that's nice being on campus all the time, that I get a lot of information from them regularly. My 2 cents.
Well, I think that, and I find that people in that position, the academic advisors, make great faculty advisors, and those are some of the reasons. So if there is an undergraduate dean or academic advisor on your campus and you're looking for a faculty advisor, that's their job, is to help those students in need, or to help students figure out their academic planning. So those are great resources and great people to ask to be faculty advisors.
Did Leonard, were you able to dial in Leonard Swanson? I show him as having a question, but I don't think he's on the phone, so I'll try to reach out to him in a different way. Other questions on trends before we move on, or observations?
Does the academic community have any insight as to how we should be dealing with this excessive drinking problem and the issues around it? I mean, I know the fraternity is struggling with what we're going to do about it, and the Arts chapter has 3 different committees working on education issues and things like that. How do we get to the undergraduate students? And I guess if we had the answer to that, we'd all be very, very rich. But, I mean, are we seeing any trends as far as how the universities are dealing with it, other than alcohol, EDU?
I mean, I just had a long discussion with my supervisor today, because I really felt, and actually was talking to our adult chapter about it, where they had a party. They had tried to put in some, pretty good risk management policies, really. They weren't following the exact policy, but they thought it was good, and they had a member show up drunk, and they called and got him help when he needed it. And then they had to face, judicial sanctions still, and they were upset. And I tried to explain to them that I don't necessarily like the policies that exist. I don't think they're realistic. I don't know that the students don't seem as realistic for sure, and they scoff at them, so they're never going to follow the policies exactly. So this was a group that was doing what they thought was being safe, and for the most part it was. I mean, I think most of the safeguards they had in place were pretty decent. There were some things they could have done better. But how do you get them to have a real conversation when you're saying, well, the policy is that no one underage can drink, and the policy is that you have to bring your own beer, and you can only have 4 beers, and you can only have 1 beer an hour? They think that's ridiculous. So how do you create policies that are more in line with what they see as real to kind of meet them where they're at? And, it's tough, because as we talked about today, the drinking age is 21, and that is the main thing they think is ridiculous, and the thing that they're never really going to follow. And so how do you create realistic policies that they can work with and see as being more in line, and they can focus on being safe and not scoff at 4 beers, 1 an hour? And how do we do that when the drinking age is 21? Because they're always going to be underage drinking, and we really can't ever condone that because it's the law. So I don't have an answer. Like you said, if I did, I would be doing this for thousands of people and talking about it. So we focus on trying our best to educate about not just the policies, but to have realistic conversations about alcohol. We do a lot of peer education around alcohol and substance abuse, where we use our counseling center and other folks to help train the students to go out and have these conversations. I'm not sure it's moving the needle a ton, but it's a start.
I think you're on the right track, though, because with the education, I mean, they have to make the decision. They have to decide that this is what we're going to enforce. I mean, that's all it comes down to. They have to make that decision as a group and as individuals to make the right decision.
Well, when I approach a chapter, what I try to say is that there's a difference between a chapter where alcohol is the center of their social life and a group of guys who get together sometimes and drink in our chapter. And if they're focused on their purpose of why they exist to be a better chapter, or to make their men better, I mean, having the chapter event focus on alcohol doesn't have a place. I never tell them don't drink. I ask them to try to be responsible, but just to not make it the only thing they can do together is drink. And there's a continuum there, and you want to push them one way. And a lot of, so certainly there's a lot of times out there that are very much on the we only exist together and get together when there's alcohol involved, just to get them to see that they can still drink, but they don't have to make it the chapter event, the chapter social life.
Other thoughts before we move on? Okay. So since you are kind of our campus connection, what resources are available to the advisor that, if we have some of these situations, and we've already kind of talked about the depression and the mental health concerns, but, what can an advisor do, or who can they reach out to on campus, if they're having the new members, that are freshmen coming in and just not able to adjust to college life very well, if they're struggling with classes, what resources can an advisor, utilize on campuses?
Well, I think, whatever the academic advising office is always a resource. I think some campuses, and mine is one of them, has a office focused on developing study skills and doing tutoring and those kind of things. I think more and more that you'll find if it's a first-year student that there is an office or a lot of emphasis put on supporting first-year students. So there's someone in the residence hall, residence life, or there's an office of first-year experience or something that you can reach out to and work with them. I mean, they're not going to be able to give you any information, but they'll certainly take down what you say, and I'm sure they'll investigate.
Is that a phone call that the advisor should make, or do you find advisors? I'm asking you this. Do you think your role is to just, recommend that you go see this, or will you take a more active role in helping set up an appointment?
I think it would depend on how severe you thought it was. I think you want to empower the student to do it themselves as much as possible, but if you're really worried and they don't seem to be getting any help, then maybe it's making a call. I mean, maybe the first call is to a advisor, and, because they're able to have a conversation with these offices where, the advisor would be a pretty one-sided thing because the staff's not going to be able to share that much with outside folks, although I try as much as I can, but there's limits.
I think if you're a chapter advisor, and we'll go with if you see a chapter member showing signs of depression or other mental health concerns, is one of those things of just, as a chapter, just let the on-campus advisor know that you have some concerns. For example, and it was brought up before, like at UT Dallas, there's always a team together that kind of meets weekly to talk about students that may be at risk. And so a lot of times it's one of those things that if I get told, I just make mention of, it's been told through an advisor, such and such student has been showing some issues, because they're not going to be able to share with me if he's been brought up sometimes, but if I let it be known that maybe their professors and other people have been noticing it, so that way they can kind of move in to maybe have that meeting with that student to see if he can get help. A lot of times it's one of those things, too, that if it's really a bad, serious case, if we go back to suicide and a really bad depression thing, on my campus, I know that I have a personal number to call whoever's the 24-hour counselor. So if there's something going on and you see it, just letting the on-campus person know, especially if it's a state of emergency, to where that resource I can call somebody immediately, so that way the on 24-hour counselor can come to that site and help with that chapter member personally. And the same thing with struggling classes or new members having trouble adjusting with college life. There's plenty of programs that the university offers. So just kind of reaching out to the campus advisor, a lot of times they can go through and sort of just make those connections for you and help you with, like, here's some resources, here's some numbers that the student can call if they're really struggling, or maybe even offering some different programs or incentives for the new member class so they can all sort of just learn together about how to make that transition from high school to college and what do these sort of study skills new set take to do well academically.
Yeah, I think Dan's right that most of it, working with the Greek advisor who knows the resources really well. And if your Greek Life office isn't necessarily offering those resources so you know about them, or at least at the minimum the presidents have that kind of information and knowledge, you should ask them to kind of do some of that training with you all, so you at least have the basics, the numbers to call, the resources that do exist.
So to the advisors, I guess, are there questions about, and again, this is kind of where that relationship comes in as to, being able to have an open communication with the Greek advisor, but, to the advisor, have you ever, invited a academic advisor to come and talk at chapter about the different resources, or maybe to a new member education class? What have advisors done to help with this campus connection?
Well, this is Dan. I guess for me, personally within my job, I think for the chapters that I have seen that have done well successfully, I think is one of the ones that I've seen they've invited outside guests to come in. I've been invited to speak with 2 different fraternity and 1 sorority chapter to the new member class, in a sense of just knowing that there's also another advisor that's there and what my role is and what I can do to help them out, my expectations, and just ways to sort of just build those relationships up. And also as well, those advisors have come and talked to me to be like, I'm noticing that my chapter's not maybe doing well in recruitment, or maybe it's conflict management. They just avoid the issues and not really want to talk about it. What can I do? What resources can I get to sort of maybe address these issues myself, or if there's someone else that can come in to sort of help them out and work through this stuff so they can better improve as a chapter.
Great.
Yeah,
I'm glad you're utilized. Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say that, besides just building a relationship with the Greek advisor, you can build relationships the chapter can with other people on campus too, and asking folks to come in, asking them to dinner or to come and talk. Our Dean of Undergraduate Studies was just telling me yesterday that he seems to be getting invited to go and talk a lot of different chapters, and he's happy to go and have the discussions because he has an agenda that he wants to get across as many students as possible. So if he's invited out to speak to students, he always goes. So he's getting to know the chapters and working more and more with them, and so that the chapters now know him and work with him. And so that I think that besides just there's lots of different folks on campus that you could build a relationship with as an advisor or as a chapter that you should kind of look for and try to do.
I'll tell you, the one resource that if you're going to invite somebody to the chapter, after you invite the Greek advisor, the next person you should be inviting is the campus police chief.
I was going to say the exact same thing.
Yeah, but at Arizona State, don't invite the Greek advisor over. Just again, best course is to ignore Jameson.
We invited him and he blew us off. So
See? Exactly. See? There you go.
We actually planned a reception for him with all the IFC and Panhellenic people, and he blew us off. So apparently we're going to do it a little later on, but what can I say? It was part of our planning. We did invite him. What can I say?
He's a terrible, terrible person.
Jameson is a nice person and deserves all of our respect.
Yeah, I've known him a lot longer than the rest of you.
Are there other questions or anything that's worked for advisors kind of as to campus resources, as far as bringing in speakers and that ones that have been pretty impactful, or questions that you might have about a resource or an issue you're seeing with your chapter, and you're wondering what offices might be able to assist with that.
Yeah, we have
Go ahead.
a counseling service when we had some mental health issues that surfaced among members, and that was very helpful to have them do a presentation, sort of generic, about situations and who you contact and where you go on campus. So that was very useful, and it's probably something we should be doing on kind of a biannual basis or something to keep that information fresh.
Sure. And Daniel, did you call it KIP, the KIP training? What was that training that you mentioned?
It was called TIPS training. It's it's like training. Oh gosh, it's intervention,
Have to go through
prevention, and suicide.
And yes, but there's also a TIPS training that's alcohol, and like for bartenders too. So maybe if you're doing it, you might have to wade through to find the suicide one.
Yeah, and a lot of it was just, and the training in itself is one of those things of just when you deal with someone, it's really sort of demystifying the myths about suicide. And so in the training, it's really one of those things of really working with individuals to be comfortable with just being very blunt and honest of, are you thinking about killing yourself? And a lot of times we feel like we shouldn't be asking those things because they might push them over the edge. But the one thing to kind of really take out of it is just that they're really looking for someone to talk to and let these feelings out. And so it's really just that opportunity to just open that door for them to be like, yes, I am. And then what you kind of do, what steps further do you do to go through that whole process, and who do you contact to get help and everything else of that aspect. So that's what the whole training and service is for.
And the first two questions the counselor is going to ask them is, are you thinking about killing yourself, and do you have a plan?
Mm-hmm.
So it was TIPS, T as in Thomas, IPS?
It's, I need to go look through and see. I know I hear at UT Dallas it was called TIPS. It's training in intervention and preventative suicide is why it was called that. But there's a lot of schools and different institutions that do some sort of training on how to deal with students who may be suicidal. And they do offer for students too, just for what if it's your roommate? What if it's someone else in another organization? And then for fraternities and sororities, like what if it is a chapter brother or chapter sister? And so how do we ask those questions and have ourselves feel comfortable, but also do the right thing to make sure that we're helping that individual?
I would say overall, as far as campus goes, that right now campuses are set up with a multitude of supports and services. They very much want to make sure their students are healthy and successful. So there's a lot of different things they are called and focuses, but there's a huge support network of resources that exist on campus. And I think as a chapter advisor, just knowing what those are and being able to refer students there if something comes up, or you talk to the president about a problem member, having the information, hey, has he gone? We sent him here yet, because it sounds like that might be helpful, is a key thing to have, and your Greek advisor can help educate you on all those kind of things.
Great. And then if you look to your right in the chat window, Dustin just posted the training and information for the prevention of suicide. So if you're, I think that's what at least on his campus, that's what the TIPS is. So it's there to your right in your chat window if you want to take a look at it. But we're nearing the end of our hour, and I want to be respectful of everybody's time. So really quickly to Mark and to Daniel, are there any kind of nuggets that you have for working with this millennial generation and kind of motivating them? I know a lot of times they get kind of a bum rap as to their work ethic and to their expectations. But I really think this can be a pretty powerful generation as far as their ambition. So are there any little nuggets of wisdom that you have in kind of energizing and motivating our millennial generation on campus right now?
Well, I mean, I think a nugget I would have is to make them or work with them as much as possible to have face-to-face interactions with each other, especially when it comes to conflict. They very much rely on shooting off an email or a text and then are surprised that it doesn't have results. And so I'm constantly saying students, a president will say to me, well, so-and-so didn't do what he was supposed to do. Did you talk to him? Well, I emailed him. Did you talk to him? You need to sit down and talk to him face-to-face. They're very reluctant to do that, especially if there's any kind of conflict. Trying to see them that work them through that if you do it, it's not going to be as bad as you think, but you have to take that step. They don't like conflict.
Yeah, and the reason why a lot of times they don't like conflict is they're really very much team-oriented. They'll say something, but then don't want to do any sort of follow-up with it as well. So, I mean, that's one of the things that working with these students here is what I realize is sort of just going back to a little bit of the basics of just how do they really sort of deal with this stuff on their own, just because a lot of times is someone else has done it for them. And so when I get called in and be like, oh, we're having some sort of issue, and they're looking at me to sort of fix it, and then they may get a little frustrated because all I'm going to do is just give them advice on how they can do it themselves. And that really comes up with any issue, and that's the one thing I notice with this generation in college.
Great, and briefly, I'll open up to advisors. Do you have any questions about the millennial generation that our hosts might be able to answer for you? Great. Okay. Hearing none, we will move on. So my clock says 8 o'clock exactly. So we have hit our hour mark. So I definitely want to say thank you to everybody for attending. Thank you to Daniel and to Mark for taking the time to gather their information and be available as we answer their questions or they answer our questions and teach us and educate us as to the role of a Greek advisor and the resources that are available through their offices and through the campus itself. I think their knowledge is many times untapped as we try to figure it out for ourselves when there's a professional on campus that can, see and is working with these issues daily. So ultimately, I would encourage everyone to start to develop a relationship with their Greek advisor, even if it is Jameson, and just work that relationship so that it's a positive relationship, and you guys understand each other's motivations and each other's goals, and so that way, it's for the betterment of the chapter and the campus as a whole. So thank you, everybody, for attending, and a big thank you to Daniel and to Mark. I do just want to point out that our next webinar is next month. It's November the 19th at the same time, and we'll be covering officer elections, and that's a typo in my PowerPoint. I apologize. We're covering officer elections and then transition, since many chapters will start doing their elections late November or into December. And then with the transition into January, we try to do these webinars on a timely basis. So this will be presentations on kind of spurring the right people to run for the positions you think are best suited for them, so that way you get the president that you want and not the president who just wants to have the alcohol socials all the time and wins the vote through that popularity contest. And then how to do an effective transition so that the whole executive board is not trying to reinvent the wheel, and that you can continue on with the gusto that you've built up over the past year, and it's not lost. But thank you for everybody for attending. This will conclude our presentation, but I will stay on the line so if anybody has any questions, feel free to stay on and we can chat afterwards. But thank you for attending, and I hope to see you next month.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you very